when you're in business, specifically if you're a financial planner, you're probably having or going through times that's a little bit lonely, or you have all these ideas, but like, who do you talk to? Who can help you in your business? How do you get outside input? All of these things are challenges for most independent financial advisors. And today, my guest, that's her speciality, and she works with Old Mutual Wealth, and really excited to have Mandy Murphy with us this morning. And we're going to talk a lot about business coaching and sort of how do you build that business of your dreams and get this input, this expert input from the outside, and just something that can really push your buttons, I think, sometimes, and then also be able to help you think a little bit outside the box and out of the norm. Because I think what happens when we are in business, we tend to, that's the way we think, and we never have anybody that can come and stress test us a little bit and drive us in a certain direction. So stick with us. Really looking forward to chatting to her, and I'll see you on the other side.
This is Propulsion, the podcast for forward-thinking and driven and ambitious financial planning professionals. It is the catalyst to the exponential growth of your financial planning practice, your business, or your franchise. This is where professionals come in order to learn about the latest technology, to learn about best practice when it comes to running and managing their business, as well as marketing, sales, relationship building, the best and most valuable interviews with local and international guests, and a whole host of other things. Without any further ado, here is your host, Francois de Toit.
Mandy, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Propulsion Live.
Good morning, Francois. Good morning, Propulsion community. It's wonderful to be here.
Awesome. As I said earlier, I had quite a few messages to saying like, oh, I'm not missing this. Can't wait to hear my friends speak. I can't do this. Can't like Manny. So there are a few people cheering for you in the audience this morning. And so I'm very privileged to have you with us this morning. The topic that we're going to be talking about is really near and dear to my heart. It's what we talk a lot about on the show. And it's what this show was built around, I think, because when lockdown came and I didn't know what I was going to do, I just thought to myself, okay, what can I do? Well, maybe other people feel the same way as I do. Let's talk about how do we make it through this, and how do we build good businesses, and how do we sort of, utilize different aspects and things to just keep building our businesses regardless of what's happening. And that's really what you get to do on a day-to-day basis. But just tell us a little bit about Mandy, who you are, and what it is that you do at Old Mutual Wealth.
Thanks, Francois. So I'm a business coach at Old Mutual Wealth, and our focus is on exactly that. It's on working with businesses to understand first that the environment that you're working in is constantly shifting and changing. It's extremely fluid, and to be able to leverage the best of what the industry and businesses at large are doing, and to take that, customize it for your own business, and be able to move forward and build something of value for everybody that comes into contact with it. So specifically what we as business coaches do in that world at Old Mutual Wealth is we work one-on-one with practices to look at their unique circumstances and environments, and then to bring the best of what we're learning, what we're seeing, and what we know into those businesses to tailor the value for the people inside that business and at the receiving end of the value of that business, the clients.
That must be such a fulfilling job, to be honest, because I think, this is something where you can give input and you can see real value being unlocked. I would like to sort of get into, what that is like for you. But if I look at the framework, the business coaching framework that you follow, I want to delve a little bit deeper into the different aspects of those and talk a little bit about the business side of everything. So I want to start off with talking a little bit about the areas of financial planning businesses that you see that are lacking focus, because everybody's good at something, right? So they're either very good at sales or prospecting or administration, or they sit and build processes the whole day but don't see clients. And there's all these weird and wonderful different things. But working in the client base that you work in, which areas of their businesses do you see are most lacking in general, or lacking focus rather in general, or even structure?
Francois, immediately what comes to mind is the value of their own time. And I don't just mean the monetary value. I mean, actually understanding the value of their time. And that is represented in exactly what you're saying. They're spending too much time or not enough time in various functions or areas of their business because they're looking at it from a business need perspective rather than a value of what their own time is and where their strengths are best leveraged in the business and where it's better to delegate out work in the business. So the biggest thing I'm finding with practices is that every business has a need and a strength that it takes out to market, but I very seldom see a parallel between what that business can do and should do and what that business owner or financial planner is giving his attention and her attention and time to. So yes, value of time, not management of time, but value of time.
Yeah, because there's a massive difference. And I also believe that you can't really manage time, right? Because time is moving constantly. It never stands still. It always moves at the same pace. There's no way you can manage it. The only thing you can actually manage is yourself and what you do. So valuing your time and deciding what you say yes to. And I think now, just thinking quickly back to what Norma just said, is like, everything's optional. Like, you don't have to do it. I think often we find ourselves in that position where we feel, shit, I have to do this. I find that in my business, and I'm not even a financial planner. You're like, oh, I have to do this. And then you spend all this time on this and then you're done. And then you think like, oh, I actually should have been doing that. And then, so you almost get to that stage where you feel guilty when you do one thing and not the other thing. And it just becomes this almost a roller coaster of feelings and a roller coaster of guilt, probably that also happens. If you think about that, if one does get into sort of that, sort of call it in that rut almost, because it does also become a habit, I think, of you get so used to it that's just the way that it is. How do you stop and just reassess and then go like, okay, what should I be doing? Like, how do you decide what those things are where you should be focusing? Like, if I now say, look, I mean, I can't be doing all this stuff. My time is worth more than doing this than it is doing that. What's my first step sort of when I get there?
Fundamentally, Francois, it's about looking at where the best return is on your time invested, and then looking at the resources around you to understand how you can put those resources, whether they may be people, technology, operations, how can you put all the resources and your own time to best use for greatest return on investment? That's fundamentally. Then at a higher level and a more strategic level in your business, it's about, and it's very much what the topic of this conversation is, it's about looking, almost having a double vision in your business. One eye on what's going on today inside your business, and most importantly, inside the lives of your clients. And the second part of your vision on where are we headed and what does life look like for my clients, where we're going, and what does my business look like in that world. That double vision allows you to then start thinking a little more clearly across your functions about where your time is best leveraged, where the greatest return on investment is. And then to kind of take the cloudiness of this discussion away, to get more granular, there are roughly 5 or 6 key functions in your business that need your attention, not necessarily your time. That is the strategy of your business first, the direction. Where are you going? Because you cannot build a business for today without knowing where that business is moving to, given the fluidity of the environment we're in. The second thing is you've got to remember that you have a duty to manage that business. So that's the business owner hat everybody talks about. And then at the core and the heart of your business, you have financial planning. That is the value you take out to the market, and that is the value that your business extracts to remain profitable and in business for the life of the relationship with those clients and the plan of those clients, which, by the way, doesn't end when you're no longer here, or doesn't end when the plan has come to fruition. It goes on intergenerationally. And why I mention that is because you need to build something of value that moves from generation to generation, not just from plan to plan. Then you have the operations function, and that's getting everything in the business plugged into the financial planning value. If you are managing operations in your business in isolation of its impact on the financial planning value you take to the market, you need to rethink what inside of that can I start to strip out, and what inside of that really needs my attention. And then moving on to the final thing is your people. Your people run the systems run the business. Wrapped around those functions wrap around the client. And so if you're not sure where to start, my advice to you is start with the client. Put yourself in your client's shoes and work your way backward on where is my time best leveraged? What is the value they need? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And what value can I bring into their lives to help them solve that matter?
It's okay. So I want to stand a little bit still at you were talking about like evaluating your resources, be it people, technology, systems, those kind of things. So when we think about resources, we often look for resources inside our business. Like, what are other areas where I can pull resources from, maybe that can help me with my business? Because if it's just you and an assistant, like that's you and an assistant. And if it's just you, it's even worse, I want to say. Like, not to stress out anybody who don't have any team, or that they don't have a team. It is just literally just you. It means that, yes, you are doing everything. So what other resources can we sort of look at that's maybe not inside my business, but somewhere else?
Again, Francois, would start with the receiving end of your value chain, your client. What are the things they need? What is it that you need to bring to the table to fully take care of them in a hyper personalized and customized way? And start to work that back. What would be the resources that would allow you to create that value? And then what are the resources I have internally? And more importantly, what are the ones I don't have? And then to start looking outside. So specifically, and we focus on investment business in our world, the range of resources is astronomical from a technology perspective. There are just so many options for relationship management with your clients, for financial planning systems and tools with your clients, for scheduling and managing your time with your clients. On the investment side, there's the outsourcing, for instance, of portfolio management. There's the outsourcing of strategy management, fund selection. There's, again, it's such an explosive world, and there's just so many options available. However, I wouldn't start there. My advice would be to start inside with what you have. I would advise that any business owner sitting with a limited capacity first document out a strategic organizational structure. So in the perfect world, if your business was operating at its fullest potential, what does that structure need to look like to really deliver on the promise you've made to the market? You've got a value proposition. Your value proposition isn't just a tagline, it's a promise to a very specific market. So what does that structure must that structure look like in order to truly deliver on that promise in a repeatable fashion, time after time after time, with no deviation? Once you've filtered that organizational structure out, go and put your name in the boxes of the roles you're currently playing. And then ask yourself, how do you build wellness in a space where you are sitting in every bit of that organogram? And then start asking yourself, where can I pull myself out? Where is there the greatest return on investment? Leave yourself there. Where can I pull myself out? Now, what options are available in that world for outsourcing? Start with the outsourcing that manages your risks, your advice risk, your business risk, your continuity risk, your relationship management risk. Start with those and start investigating the options available. Again, it doesn't sound very specific, but Francois, you'll know there are just so many options out there. So I wouldn't start with the universe of options. I would start with, where is my business? What does an ideal structure look like based on the promise I've made? Where am I sitting that I shouldn't be sitting? And now, from there, where do I go to find the outsourced help? And if you're really not sure, call us.
Of course. So I want to play a bit of devil's advocate. So I'm going to use a word that everybody loves to use, right? Mandy, but I am a small business. Like, I don't see the value for me doing an organogram and I know that I'm in all the roles. So this is like, why is this going to be even useful to me as a small business? I don't see why I should do this,
Absolutely. And that is definitely the friction that exists out there. The reality is, again, and always with your client as the true north on your compass, you are competing in a massive market that is fighting to acquire that client and serve that client. And they are building structures and capabilities to deliver the promise that you're making to the market that you're serving. And so the reality is you don't have to. You don't have to be motivated to restructure. But two things come out of that. Suddenly your client is being, your client is being attracted to models that deliver the same promise and value that you do, that are focusing on building a structure and a capability and capacity to actually deliver the promise that you're making. So now you start operating in an environment where your client has more options than just you. The question then becomes is, in your limited capacity, without doing what I've just suggested, how much of what you're delivering is scalable, hyper-personalized, customized for clients? And if it isn't, because you couldn't possibly in all those roles, how much of it is commoditized? Because if it's commoditized, the question is, what glues your clients to you? And who are you competing with? So you need to compare like for like, because there are people or businesses in the market who want your clients. And so that, in essence, I would say would inform the decision of, if you're competing for the same market, how attractive are you next to the businesses that are prepared to do the work?
Yeah, and I mean, how do you stand out, right? I guess that it boils down to that. Like, how do you attract the clients? How do they notice you and not the 6 people next to you or the 6 businesses next to you? And it is quite a thing. And if you don't understand your client, you won't know how to stand out for them. Like,
Absolutely.
right? So it does start there. So I mean, I think you've said twice now this morning already that start with the client, start with what they want, start with what they need and what's important to them, and then work your way backwards from there. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about client management, if you don't mind. What do we really mean when we say client management? Because that's a very wide area. There's relationship management, there's the work, there is the advice. I mean, there's a whole host of things. But what are we talking about when we talk about the client management aspect of the business?
I would say that there's 2 distinct levels in my mind from my experience on client management. At the baseline sits the hygiene factors. It's what you do to deliver on your regulatory and core objectives. And the core objectives is really, what is the client paying for? And is that client getting what they pay for? And then obviously, what is it that you're required to do? And is the client getting what you're required to do? So that fundamentally sits in the hygiene space. Then obviously in the motivation factor space, that is the ability to take the relationship further than what you are required to do and further than what you are paid to do, and into a space where you truly understand how value is interpreted and perceived by the person at the receiving end of your value. Why do I keep talking about that? Because in my experience, many business owners / financial planners, because most people probably in this community and certainly in the world I work in, wear many hats. So you are the business owner, you are the financial planner. The core issue that I find in relationship management is that planners / owners aren't clear on the market where they enjoy the greatest success. That is the market where their own wellness is actually built. Know who your market is. Know who you are best equipped to serve. Know whose problems you solve best. Know what they like, their psychographics, their demographics, what they're experiencing in their circumstances, where their world is going, what their life looks like. When you know that, then you're, again, able to bring it back and say, okay, what are the regulatory and hygiene factors that I deliver into that space? Remembering my competitors are delivering the same thing because it's a requirement. When I move into the management side, that sits inside the motivation side, that is where wellness for myself and my client will come from. And that is, I understand my clients. I know their unique circumstances. I don't just scale business. First, I customize what I do. Then I hyper-personalize it so that it tells the client the story about the client. And it solves or addresses the circumstances of that client. And then I start to build all the factors of my business that deliver that experience. So in practical terms, what could that mean? And I've raised it a couple of times in a lot of the talks that I've done recently. It is, for example, you issue a client a financial plan. Does that plan talk about money, or does that plan tell the story of the client's life? If it is a money story, then you are competing with all your competitors, and really all that separates you at this point is your price and potentially your returns. When that plan tells the story of the client, it says a couple of things. You know your market, you know the people you're dealing with, you're solving the problems that you're supposed to be solving for them, and your business is built on who they are and what they need from you. So it's target market selection. It's understanding who your ideal client is. It's understanding not just where you enjoy your greatest success, but where you have the greatest impact. So relationship management is the things you have to do, and then it is the customizing and tailoring of the financial planning and the stuff that you do in their life. Again, always from the perspective of the clients. I know a lot of us can't get granular. There's too much detail.
I know. So two questions now top of mind. The first one is, so often, I've had many of these conversations before. So either a financial planner wants to break into a new market, so they don't want to change the market they're working in. They want to add an additional market. So, for example, they've always worked with, let's just say, with professionals or with a specific, sort of in a specific niche, but they now want to bring on. They want to enter the business market. So they want to start working with business owners, for example. So that's the one part. So how do you pivot? Not pivot, that's not pivoting, but just how do I go and now enter this additional client market? What would be those first steps? But also, what if I find myself in a position where, look, when I find like working with this group of people, it's not really exciting me. I'm not really like finding a lot of self-fulfillment from that. And I don't feel like I'm making a massive difference. But if I could work with business owners, for example, and pivot my business completely away from one target market to another one, like how do those two approaches differ, and where does one start to sort of do that?
So the first thing you would need to do is understand the problem that market is trying to solve. Why do they need a financial planner? What is it that they're trying to achieve? And remember, solving problems isn't always a pain matter, but it could be a gain matter. So it could be I aspire to something, but I'm not there yet. So that could be the problem that they're trying to solve. But the starting point is, what problem are they trying to solve? The next part is, how are they currently solving it? Where are they going to solve that problem? That could be to competitor businesses that do what you do, that are already working in that market, or it could be alternative markets that are solving that problem in a different way. Then you need to start to compare what you can bring to the table, whether that's in your capabilities, your skills, your experience, or in the structure of your business, that allows you to deliver value that is better than or different to where they're going for those solutions already. And once you've gotten to that point, then you need to ask yourself, what is my reach into that market? And what is the perception at the moment of my credibility in that market? And once you have those answers, you actually have the gaps that you need to start closing on that plan and the next actions in reality. But the first thing you need to obviously do is understand what problem are they solving? Again, I keep bringing it back to the client's perspective, because the one thing I do find when I'm working with practices is we do everything from our own perspective. And if we could just release that, it would get so much easier if we could just put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and ask, what do I need? What do I expect? And what would give me fulfillment? And the ultimate question, what would I be willing to pay for? What would I be willing to pay for? Because if performance is what I'm paying for, then is that the market you want to be in? If I'm in the business market and what you have to offer and your strengths and skills lie in that space, then is that something I'm willing to pay for? Because if it has no value, then I would say do it in your spare time.
Yes, it's a hobby. So I mean, and that's such an important point. It's something I think I've spoken about a couple of times, if not on the show, definitely with people, is that, if we as financial planners are not willing to pay for stuff, how do you expect your clients to pay for stuff? And whatever method of payment, that's besides the point. But if you don't see value in things, how are they going to see your value? So it does start with us as well, and our own mindset around this. And I see this a lot between working with accountants and working with financial planners. There is a distinct difference in what accountants are willing to pay for versus what financial planners are willing to pay for. Financial planners got a totally different sort of mindset. And I think it's just because like everything's always been, like you can get this, and like yes, CPD, oh, you don't need to pay for it, the corporates will give it to you. You don't need to do this, you'll give it to you. And unfortunately we're in that thing. And then there's a lot of people I've recently saw on LinkedIn, again, somebody saying, I do this for free, I do this for free. And I'm burning to respond to that. But I'm also just first thinking about how do I respond to that? Because like, don't do that. Like, we're not doing ourselves any favors from that point. But there's something that you've been mentioning now more than twice. Like this is the thing that that's stood out for me so far this morning, apart from a few other things, is that you're talking about hyper-personalization and customization. Talk me a little bit through that, and what do you mean by that, and what does it look like in practice?
Okay, so to come back to that point, the perfect example of hyper-personalization and customization is the commonality between everybody in this group is that somebody sits at the other end of that table and takes a recommendation, makes a decision, and starts moving towards a life goal. That is the commonality everyone in this group shares. You are on the side of the table that aims to get that person to where they're going. So what does hyper-personalization look like in that world? Because that's the most important thing. That's where value is created. That's where our industry belongs. And that's truly what's ultimately being paid for. Hyper-personalization in that world is exactly what I said earlier. It is the recommendation a money story, or is that recommendation a human story? Does that recommendation, does that plan, does that value, does that shift, does that future talk about money and what that money can do and how it can swell as fast as it can? Or does it tell the story of where somebody is going, given who that unique individual is, given the circumstances that unique individual is facing and the aspirations that individual has? And does that plan talk to what that unique individual has in terms of their own resources and their own aspirations to get where they need to go? And is where they need to go factoring in their own behaviors, their own history, their own circumstances, their own financial means, the needs of their families, the needs of their businesses if they're business owners? That's the customization and hyper-personalization in its most obvious form in our industry. If I had to come into your office and pull a financial plan out of a random digital folder, could I understand the human being that plan is talking about? Because if I can't, then your plan or your delivery of value is not hyper-personalized. It is to some degree commoditized. If it tells me the story about investments and returns, it tells me nothing. But if it tells me about a human being, it is hyper-personalized. Is that scalable? Absolutely. That's where the resources that we talked about earlier in outsourcing come from, is to start looking at resources that serve the hyper-personalization purpose. How can I generate a story about a human being that gets them where they need to go without spending hours and days and weeks and months doing that? Because that's the result I need to achieve. So what is out there that helps me get that result in a scalable way so that I can do it for more than just 10, 20, 30 people? And so that they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah. You just stole my next question. So thank you. Because my question is like, is that scalable? And how do we scale, being hyper-personalized, hyper-customized? And I mean, do you see in practice that even though we do this hyper-personalization, hyper-customization kind of thing, and I think technology plays a big role in that as well, to help us achieve that. But would you say that in practice, you again put 100 people together, there are, again, pockets of people with similar things, similar life stories, it is hyper-personalized, but it's probably on a group level not that unique, right? There's only so many things that can happen to us and only so many things that we go through. Do you see that in practice, or is it a case of like 100 people, 100 different scenarios, or is there an overarching theme that you can put people sort of into pockets?
Absolutely. And thank you for focusing that discussion, because that's exactly the point, is hyper-personalization doesn't say 100 unique financial plans if 100 clients is what you have. In fact, what it does is it turns segmentation, as we all traditionally know it, on its head. It says that there are clusters or groups of people that you serve that share commonalities. They either share sociographics or they share certain functional or factual circumstances in their lives that are similar. So segmentation isn't about rating your clients, for instance, and giving them scores and then how frequently you send out newsletters. What it is actually aiming to achieve is to look at your market and say, how do I group people with common circumstances together? And how do I serve the needs of those people in their cluster so that I'm solving their unique problem, but I'm doing that for a group of people who have a very similar situation. So to give you an example, and I'm going to use an old mutual wealth example, and you will know in your own world what that looks like. But in the old mutual wealth world, obviously we do integrated wealth planning, which is really lifestyle financial planning. And so a financial plan is based on a strategic outcome. There are goals that are linked to return strategies. And it doesn't mean that every client is going to be sitting in a different strategy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We believe that if you're planning properly and you're truly hyper-personalizing, you're going to identify people who have goals that sit into clustered or sit inside clustered return strategies. And so all I would do is I'd be looking across my base, working in my system, picking up what every individual's personal investment return target is, clustering the groups together that sit in, say, for instance, a 3 to 7 return, 5 to 7, the 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, 7 to 9, whatever those return strategies are that meet the goal demands of that person. I'd then cluster those together. I would segment that group together and I would financially plan them very similarly, but it is unique to their personal investment target. And then I would start to talk, if I wanted to go into the motivation factors, I would start to talk in my newsletters, not to the general client base. I'd be speaking to my strategy return clusters about their unique scenarios, because their personal investment return targets or strategies give you a very good idea of what their concerns are, what their thinking is all about, what it is that they're dealing with, what their interests are. And I would be scaling, one, my financial planning, my investment management, and then my communication and relationship management based on those. So, Francois, I'm not sure if I've answered the question correctly or as you would have put it, but that's how you scale hyper-personalization. Yes, we all have personal investment targets, but you can pretty much find the commonalities and group clusters of clients together based on those.
Yeah. And I like how you said, like you're taking the segmentation sort of thing and turning it on its head. I think if I can put it in another way, it's actually using your segmentation and taking action on it, because usually it's just a platinum, gold, silver kind of label for whatever reason in your CRM, and we don't do anything with it.
Exactly.
Whereas
Box
this
tick.
is yes, exactly. I have to do this, tick. There you go, CPD, tick. But I mean, one could then say, look, I mean, what's really happening here is that you are tailoring your communications, and it might mean that, yes, you don't send things to people that they don't have, or that doesn't apply to them. So it's that sort of customization level. So yeah, it'll still say, let's just say, Dear Francois, but then the content in there is different from the Dear Mandy one that goes out, because we're not in the same strategy. We maybe not in the same world kind of thing. And we don't understand, like, we want to do something once and send it to everybody because that's efficient, right? But it's not effective. So being efficient and effective, I think, is two very different things. And the more you can talk to that, and I actually had a discussion yesterday with someone, we were talking about, because I think specifically when you start niching and you also start focusing on, moving just a little bit to the left on this conversation, but if you sort of start niching and focusing on a specific client, a specific type of client, for example, specifically early on, often you will find yourself in a position where you go, yes, I don't know, maybe I should also look at this, and maybe I should also look at this, because let's just make it broader. If the net is bigger, then I can catch more fish, right? So I don't even know if I'm in the right pond, by the way, but that's sort of the thesis. And my response to that was, like, you've got to niche first, and sort of focus on something specific. And I always think about Amazon. They started off with books, And today they own the world, right? So they only did books. And that's all they did. They didn't worry about toys or garden tools or anything like that, or electronics for that matter. They just focused on books. And that's how they started. And it's almost the same in your business. Is like, if you feel like you're all over the place, maybe decide to focus on something specific, because that will lead in future to you being able to do more for more people. But that then sort of just as much relates to the communication stuff that you're just saying. Send focused communications to the different, call them groups of people or different segments in your business, so that it speaks to that person and not in general. Because if you speak in general, you're basically speaking to no one, right?
Absolutely. The quickest way to be ignored is to continually send irrelevant communication. Business is about relevance. Planning must be relevant. The communication must be relevant. Everything you do comes down to, is this relevant to the individual and to the cluster who share commonalities? Is it relevant to them? And if it's not, and you continue to ignore that, you will become irrelevant to them and they will start to ignore you. And those clients drop very quickly into the transactional relationship space, where they see no value in you and you're extracting no value out of those relationships. Absolutely. The quickest way to become valuable to nobody is to try and scale without understanding what relevance looks like in the world of your clients. And I like what you're saying, Francois, start with something. Start with something you're good at. Focus on that. When you get good at distributing that value, then you can start to expand rather than shrinking later. Expand later. Get good at what you already do, and then expand.
Awesome. Mandy, tell me, so, working with Old Mutual Wealth business coaches, like, how does that work? If somebody's interested to learn more about this, how does it work? Like, what is the model? Just how do people, if they want to make use of this, like, where do they start?
Okay, perfect. So the first thing I will say about the Old Mutual Wealth business coaches is that what differentiates us, we believe, for now, is that we're not just looking back at best practices and understanding what the better businesses are doing and sharing that. We're also doing that. But because the world is changing so fast and business cycles are speeding up, we're also looking forward. So we definitely help our businesses to constantly watch the future, anticipate the trends, anticipate what's coming, design based on what you're seeing coming, and then implement in short spurts and cycles. Tweak things in your business, take them out quickly. So we're looking back and we're looking forward, and we're giving you the best of both. How do you engage a program like this with our particular coaches? Is that we are specifically investment practice focused coaches. We are not general practice focused coaches. We've decided to select a niche market. So when you engage with us, you come into a strategic partnership with us. And what that allows you to do is a business coach is allocated to your business. Certain amount of hours per year is dedicated to that. Our job then is to work with you to unlock in you where you see your business going. So we don't come in with a paint by numbers program. We don't come in with a sketch of what you need to do. We help you unlock in your own mind where you're going, what your potential is, what your options are, what alternative strategies may look like, and then hold you accountable for implementing those. We become your conscience. Because we're investment focused, we actually come with a team of specialists. So when you engage a business coach, you are joining our program, you will get a solutions specialist, somebody whose job is to understand what your clients need and what are the best solutions that we have that solve the financial needs of your clients, strategies, etc. Then we get a financial planning coach in our team, and that person's job is to then say, you're more than just the solutions you pick for your clients. You are building the story of your client's current and future life. And then we come in and say, how does that go to market in the best way? So you contact us, you sign a strategic partnership with us. Those 3 resources for that partnership are dropped into your business, and we build your business, we build your advice proposition, and we ensure that you hyper-personalize the implementation of your solutions based on your clients' money stories. So it's a strategic partnership, monthly fee, depending. It depends on how many financial planners you have in your business, and it is 20 hours of business coaching per annum, 25 hours of financial planning coaching per annum, and unlimited access to a solutions specialist. So it's a
Mandy,
three-prong one.
That's a mouthful. So I've got the website address on the screen, omwealth.co.za. I've also put the links and some additional links down below in the description here on YouTube. Mandy, thank you so much for your time today. It was insightful. I look forward to talking to you some more. You are amazing. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Francois. Thank you, everyone.
All righty. And just like that, we've come to the end of another show. So thank you for being here. Remember to go book your ticket for the Propulsion Summit. Please support us. Go and have a look at the agenda, propulsionsummit.com. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Stay safe. Be blessed and prosper. And remember to raise the bar. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Remember to check out the live show, Propulsion Live, on YouTube every Friday at 7 a.m. South African time. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. That's propulsion.co.za/live. And please remember to subscribe, share with your colleagues, your friends, and anyone who may find value like you did in this podcast. Once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.